Hello, my friends. It is Monday, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this subject. So, the subject is the idea of finding your tribe. You ever hear that phrase, I'm looking for my tribe. I'm looking for a place to belong. How can I connect with people who have a higher resonance with? These are people who we would describe as, for lack of a better way of saying it, you get me, or you get enough about me where I feel like we have a high resonance. We're on the same wavelength. That's kind of how I would describe the idea of finding one's tribe. And I have had many really meaningful relationships with people, finding people who you have things in common with at your job and in your community, and that's all great. And that actually is still a part of what I value today. Is I feel like I have a very supportive community, lots of neighbors and friends and coworkers and people around in the general vicinity of the areas that we live, and even people now with the age of the internet who we can reach far and wide into other states and other countries, even just all across the world. You can have people who you vibe with. And I think that's wonderful. It's beautiful. And that outer layer of community is hugely significant. And I feel like I have that. And I feel like I'm very fortunate for that. But your tribe is a little bit different in that what I'm thinking about more is the people who are the behind the veil people. So those are, society uses the language of friends or friendship very loosely. Even on Facebook, you have your Facebook friends, or you friend someone on social media. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who maybe you see them quite regularly. They're the people who you spend, maybe the top 5 people or top 3 people you spend the most time with. Or people who, if you don't have the occasion to spend that much time with them, the time that you spend together, it's like there's no time missed, in between. When you talk, it's just like the last time you talk. You just picked up right where you left off. High level of intimacy in your conversation, and you speak using your words, and you also communicate non-verbally. It's an energy exchange. Those are the people who I would call your true tribe. It's the difference between someone who you tell, hey, I'm okay. I had to go to chemotherapy last week, versus the people who actually drove you to your chemotherapy last week. I mean, that's deep. Another example that I use is, or they hear on Facebook that a parent or your close friend has passed away, versus the people who you called that night when you got that call, or when you left the hospital sobbing and they came to your house. But because our culture is so different these days than it was many years ago, I'm finding that it's difficult to have that naturally occur. And so I feel like you have to be more intentional about creating spaces where those kind of relationships can be cultivated. And we are very much isolated, I think, in many ways with our technology that can be a tool to help us bridge gaps and make connections, but can also be a hindrance and a barrier for that face to face interaction. There are so many people who are struggling with loneliness and feeling isolated in this culture. And I think that the idea of finding a tribe is not a unique one. And so I just want to put it out there. Do you have a tribe? Do you feel like you found your tribe? How did you go about finding your tribe? Do you feel like that evolves over time? And so do you feel like your tribe has stability? Do you feel like you're constantly reinventing your tribe as you're constantly reinventing yourself? The other thing I wanted to say about that, when I'm talking about higher resonance, I'm really talking about chemistry. I heard a woman on one of her blogs talking about how one might go about finding their tribe. And she listed some really practical advice that I think is pretty sound practical advice. One of which, when you're looking for your tribe, first look for people who have the attributes that you would like them to have. Write that list. And then take that list and compare it to yourself. and look at those items that you have written down and assess whether or not you actually have those character traits. Some of the things that would be on my list would be deep divers, deep thinkers. I love people who go deep. I can't stand it all, and I'm very uncomfortable with small talk, but I love people who can dive deeply in conversation. And so I always look for that big talk versus a small talk. I like people who are thoughtful, empathetic, compassionate, passionate. And so those are some of the characteristics that I look for. But I have to compare that to myself and think, how do I fit in that list? So I think that that's great, really great, sound advice. But the one thing she didn't talk about, and I think a lot of people who give advice on finding your tribe are remiss in this area, is it's more than just practicality. It's more than just writing a list and comparing it to yourself. That's all useful, but energy is a huge piece of that equation. Chemistry. Whether or not you reach that place of high resonance often begins and ends with that energy exchange. So I've met people, for example, who have that list of things that I laundry listed down, and there's still just not that energy exchange. And so then the resonance can only get but so far. So I think we oftentimes underestimate that chemistry that happens when you meet someone and you feel just completely and utterly connected, and you don't even know why. Maybe you can't articulate. Maybe your list of character traits is completely off kilter and not at all what it is, what you thought it would be. But for some reason, you just feel completely drawn to that person as a friend or a close companion. So that's really interesting to think about and to consider. And so I just ask you, consider this.